Hi, and welcome to the first part of this workshop series on Power BI and how we can use it for oil and gas analytics. I am Nashat Omar. I am a petroleum engineer by degree. I have been working as a production engineer for the past 12 years. Plus, I am expert on data, data science, and different workflows in oil and gas industry. Before we dive any deeper into Power BI and how we can use it, it's good to know the trainings that we're going to provide related to Power BI, which is, by the way, it's very affordable training and it's very relatable. And each and every domain in oil and gas industry will benefit from this training. So this is the main concept of the training. So this is the main layout and the main workflow of the training. So we will start first by getting an introduction on Power BI graphical user interface. And then we're going to explore ready-to-exist projects. And then I'm going to teach you how to create projects from scratch. And afterwards, I will teach you how to connect to different data sources like SQL, Microsoft Access, CSV, text files, you name it. And then once we pass the connectivity, we will start working with visualizations. I will show you some basic visualizations and some more advanced visualizations. And in the training, if you stick to the last of the training, like the full training, I will show you how to also integrate Python with this, because Python is going to allow you to do really, really great visualizations and calculations as well. Plus, we are going to see what data modeling is, how to effectively model your data, what is data types, what is relationships, which is something extremely crucial and important to each and every oil and gas engineer to understand. We see lots of relationships between the data, but we don't understand what these relationships are. So in this part of the training, I will show you what relationship is, what to look for, and how to create a relationship effectively. And then we're going to start working with advanced visualization and DAX analytics, which is a programming language designed specifically for Power BI for analytics. And then finally, we are going to do some integrations as well. This training caters to almost everyone: production engineers, reservoir engineers, drilling people, finance people, HR people, people who work with QHSE, and so on and so forth. You can go as deep as you want in this training. If you want, you can only apply the basics. If you like to, you can only apply the Python part. If you want, you can also apply the coding part. So there are lots of bits and pieces in this training that caters for everyone. So now that's out of the way. Now let's go ahead and start learning what Power BI is and how you can basically utilize Power BI effectively. So Power BI, it's a new caliber of tools that has been around for the past 10 years. Power BI is not a unique tool. Power BI belongs to a family of tools that is called business intelligence. So what is business intelligence? Business intelligence, it's a way to analyze your business data. And believe it or not, any data that we acquire in the oil and gas industry, it's business related. Because at the end of the day, although we are technical people, we work with problems, we try to solve problems, we do our best to understand what's happening. At the end of the day, what we are trying to do is we're trying to maximize the finances and maximize the rate of return. So at the end, we are trying to maximize the cash flow and the positive cash flow. So business intelligence tools is a tool that was designed to cater this purpose in order to know how business is performing. And believe it or not, even oil and gas fields are considered as businesses. That's why these tools are called business intelligence, or BI for short. So the BNI is what makes the Power BI, which is short for business intelligence. So the ultimate goal or the ultimate return of using these types of tools is to drive business analytics, to get some insights, and ultimately drive some decisions from the higher management, where basically it can drive the business, and the business should thrive at the end. So how can we achieve business intelligence, or how we can perceive business intelligence? Business intelligence, it's a broad concept. It can refer to lots of things. It can refer to just seeing the data or visualizing the data. Sometimes it refers to creating calculations that's going to show you patterns in your data. Believe it or not, even machine learning and AI can also be a part of business intelligence, but that's something a little bit advanced. So here are some of the things that you usually do in business intelligence in order to drive insights. And these insights is basically taken from information. And of course, information is usually built on data. And as we said earlier, the final thing that we are trying to achieve, or the ultimate goal we're trying to achieve, is to create data-informed and insight-based decisions. So here are some of the things that business intelligence tools allows us to do in order to reach that state. Number one, it allows us to read data and transform data and manage data effectively. By the way, I cannot emphasize enough on this. Most companies, they use Excel for data storage. Most companies, they use Excel for data analytics. I am not saying that you cannot do that. You can do that. However, the best way is to integrate Excel into Power BI. Excel is a great tool for simple analytics, but whenever you're trying to manipulate the table, or whenever you're trying to link multiple Excels together, that's going to be really, really tough to do. That's why Power BI was designed by Microsoft in order to target that part. The second thing that you usually have in the business intelligence tools are the reporting tools. Reporting tools are the main tools that we usually use in order to show data, show trends, and basically take these large volumes of data and convert them into an actual insights, or we convert them into actual informations that basically can drive some decision afterwards. That was for the tooling part or reporting tools. The other thing that we have is the statistics. Now, have you ever used Excel before and tried to find statistics about some column? Usually what you will do, either you write these functions manually in Excel, like average, like maximum, minimum, count. Well, believe it or not, the same functions also exist in Power BI, but they are much, much, much more powerful because you can control each and every aspect of these functions. By the way, most of the times, even you don't need to write these functions. They already exist with you once you interact with Power BI. And of course, I'm going to show you how these things work today. What you can do also, you can do some analytics. You can do some calculations. Calculations are done in Power BI through multiple ways. One of the ways that calculations are done in Power BI is by using something called DAX. Believe it or not, Microsoft designed a programming language from scratch just to target data analysis. And this is what it stands for, Data Analysis Expression, or it's known as DAX. Now, an important question that I get a lot, do we need to learn DAX in order to use Power BI? The answer is going to be no. You don't need to know DAX in order to use Power BI. But here's the catch. If you want to create insightful analysis with Power BI, you have to use DAX. I know lots of people who use a Power BI without even using the DAX, and they are happy about that. So if it gets your job done, then it's good. And the final thing for these types of analytics tools is there should be a way to do some visualization. Believe it or not, human brain cannot process lots of data. Have you ever taken a look at data in Excel, and that data might contain tens upon tens of columns and thousands upon thousands of rows? Well, human brain cannot process that. That's why we turn into visualization. Visualization basically converts these thousands, if not tens of thousands of data points, and convert them into something visual for our brain to process. That's why we love visualization, and it's extremely important for the visualization to tell us what's happening to our data and what is the story behind our data. So why we use Power BI? So what you can do with Power BI? Of course, Power BI is a general tool. The tool is not designed for oil and gas industry alone. The tool is designed for everyone to use. And believe it or not, that's one of the powerful points why you learn Power BI. Once you learn Power BI once, you can apply it in multiple industries. Now we are living in an era where the information or the thing that you spend time on or the thing that you learn, it has to be transferable easily to other industries, just like Python, just like machine learning, just like other things. So the thing that you should spend time on nowadays, it should be easily transferable to other industries. I know people who use Power BI in finance. I know people who use it in manufacturing. I know people who use it for mine. I know people who use it for wells. I know people who use it for facilities. And I even know people who use it for HR analysis and employee uh, task performance tracking. So you can use Power BI virtually for everything. But in this training is customized to oil and gas industry because all the data, all the workflows, all the examples, everything that we do is to target and try to solve some of the challenges that we have as day-to-day oil and gas engineers. So here are some of the things that you can do with Power BI. Not everything, but some of the things you can do. You can do data visualization. I know people that only use Power BI for visualization. Believe it or not, Power BI visualization, it's way, way more powerful than Excel. Although both of these tools are the same from the same company, Microsoft, but Power BI, it's way, way more powerful. You cannot even compare Power BI to Excel. That's just a shame. You can do data analysis, and you will see what this means. You can create dashboard, which means multiple figures, multiple tables, things interacting together, filters, and whatnot. You can create KPI monitorings, KPI, which is short for key performance indicators, which are numbers that you track to know the performance. Plus, you can standardize the interfaces and the dashboards among them. I'm not going to tell you what Power BI is composed of, but it's good to know that Power BI comes into multiple layers. And the first layer of Power BI is free, which is called Power BI Desktop. That's why lots of companies use it. So if your company uses Tableau, for example, or they use Azure Analytics or Google Analytics, most of the time, companies from North America, they use Spotfire, but that software is paid. However, Power BI is free. And the desktop version is free. Everything else you have to pay for it. But usually you don't need these unless you are working inside an organization. And of course, organizations are going to pay for these. But the desktop version, 100% free. You don't need to create an account. You don't need to create nothing. So it's 100% free. And this is the natural evolution of Power BI. So we started with 1985. We started with the Microsoft Excel, and then we moved forward to SQL servers, which is databases, and then we moved to reporting services in 2004. And finally, in 2015, that's 10 years ago, a product came around which was called Power BI to complement all of these technologies that were built by Microsoft. Now, where you can download Power BI, you can download Power BI from Microsoft website. So if you go to powerbi.microsoft.com, you will be able to download the Power BI. And Power BI, of course, comes into two versions. You can download the 32-bit version or the 64-bit version. Of course, the 60-bit version, it's way better than 32-bit because it utilizes more RAM. So this is where you can get Power BI from. You can snap a screenshot in order to know where you get this from. Now, one of the important things in data analytics, it's the data. Without data, you cannot do any analytics. And you should take data very, very seriously. No data means no analytics. No analytics means no wise decisions. So that's why Power BI has incorporated many sources for data. You can get data in Power BI from files. You can get them from databases. You can get them online from services like Azure, like Amazon Web Services and whatnot. You can even get them from programming languages like R, like Python. So believe it or not, you have four unique data sources for Power BI. And do you know what's the best part? You can use all of these at the same time. So you're not just limited to any of these. In some of the projects that we usually do in the training, we link text files, CSV files, Excels, and we can even link Microsoft Access to this. So here are the list of the files that are supported. And here's the list of the databases supported. I am just scanning through these because I am going to show you how to connect to these files once we open the software. And the most important thing people at Microsoft did is they integrated Power BI with Python. So here's the deal. If you know your way around in Python, or at least you know the basics of Python, you already know that you can create really powerful analysis with Power BI. Before we conclude today's session, I'm going to show you an example on Power BI and how it was connected to Python and how basically Python started to read log files and basically visualize less files real time in the Power BI. Now, let's go ahead and start converting this into the practical part. So let's open up the Power BI software. So the Power BI should be installed on your PC online. Once you install that on your PC, you can go to Start and search for Power BI. And this is what the software looks like. You have this yellow 3-bar icon, which is representing the bar plot. You will open that and wait for the software to load up. There we go. Once you open the software, you will see there are lots and lots of lists I have for the Power BI project. And of course, these lists of projects will depend on the person who is using Power BI because I use Power BI quite a lot. So that's why you see lots of lists we have. But once you install Power BI from scratch, you are not going to see anything. But once you start to create projects, you're going to start to see things that are showing up. So let me show you the first thing that we're going to do. We're going to build a Power BI from scratch, and I'm going to show you how to drive some basic analytics from it. So let's click on blank report. And once you click on blank report, what you're going to see, you're going to see a software that looks very similar to Excel, but it's not Excel. So let me show you what you can do with this. So the software is divided into three main parts. So we have the top part, which is the tabs. We have the left part, which is some of the options, that core options that you can switch from, which is the report view, the data view or the table view, the model view, and the DAX query view. So all of these things usually covered in the training, by the way. And the right-hand side, we have the visualizations, which is really important part and integral part of Power BI. Now, you might be wondering, how can we start pushing data into this? Here's what you can do. In Home, if you go to get data, you will get some quick suggestions for your data, like Excel, data flow, Dataverse, SQL, text files, web, and whatnot. If you don't find your option or the thing that you want to connect to, that's just fine. Click on More, and then Microsoft is providing with a plethora of options. For example, if you go to files, you will see like just the files you want to get. For example, you will see the XML, JSON, text CSV. By the way, if you use XML, you can even decode the drilling with small files. But of course, it's not recommended to do it that way. It might crash the software because since these files are really large. You can select databases. We have lots and lots of databases. Too many databases, to be honest. We have Microsoft Fabric, which is the integration with Microsoft services, which is most of the companies nowadays have. We have the Azure services if you want to. We have some online services like Google, like Databricks, Snowflake. We have lots and lots and lots of connections. And if you go to others, you will see even more connections. And believe it or not, you can also connect and get data using Python and using R. So once you see that there is Python and R integration, it means that virtually any data source can be integrated into Power BI with ease. So we're going to start very simple. We're going to select Excel workbook, and we're going to select an Excel file, and we're going to open up a file that contains some shale data. So we can basically start getting those. So we will open our Excel file. Now this is the part that's different from Excel. You will select all the columns, all the tables that you want. Each Excel workbook, it's going to be translated in a table. And of course, you need some maturation in Power BI to understand what tables actually mean and how basically these can connect together. So let's select view tables. And once we select view tables, we can click on load. And you can see how fast it is. By the way, if you are coming from Spotfire background, in Spotfire, you cannot load multiple tables at the same time. That's just not possible. But in Power BI, you can do that with ease. Let's wait for the tables to be loaded up. Now the data seems to be loaded up. Now, where can you see the data? You can see the data on the right-hand side where there is a new panel opened up, which says data. Now, if you're comfortable with these four tables, that's just fine. If you want more, you can also add some data on top of these. Let me show you something that before we even start. Now, do you see those tables in Power BI? The things that different from Excel is these tables talk to each other. So what do we mean by that? It means that anything that you do in one of these tables, it has a potential to affect the other tables because they are linked with relationships. So if you go to the model view, you will see that these tables are already linked like a spider web. Uh, sorry. You can actually even modify the relationships, add relationships, delete relationships, and basically potentially you can do anything with these. So let me show you some basic things that we can do with Power BI. So for example, let me add a line chart. So we will click on the line chart. This will add a line chart for us. Let me show you how powerful this is. Now, this is the first thing that you can do. That's not possible in Excel with ease. So let me show you. We can go to cumulative production and we can drag and drop the gas production or the total gas production to the y-axis. And on the x-axis, we're going to have the time. So once you do this, you will see like the summation of total gas produced per time. This is the total or this is the summation of produced gas. But what happens if you don't want to see the summation? Maybe you want to see the average. In Excel, you have to go and change the full formula for this. But let me show you what you can do. I will minimize this chart. I will copy and paste this chart very easily. Just copy and paste. And then I will change the summation of oil into summation of gas into average of gas. So once you do that, now you're calculating the average per time. Not just that. Maybe you don't want to see all of these at the same time because now what you're seeing is this is the total production or the total average for the full field. But what happens if you want to see the same chart, but for each well on its own? If you try to do this in Excel, it's going to be really cumbersome. Let me show you how easy it is. You will drag and drop the name of the well on top of the legend. Now, all of your charts are broken down into single line for each chart. Let me show you something. You can go to options and basically activate something called a zoom slider. A zoom slider basically allows you to zoom into a certain part in your data. This basically allows you to scan some part of your data. You can, of course, zoom on the X and Y and basically just expand some portion of your data, which is something that's not possible in Excel, at least easily. This is if you want to see everything like this. Now, what happens if I want to see how much each well is contributing to the full production? Let me show you. In Excel, you have to transform the data first. But in Power BI, you can directly drag and drop the data. So let me show you. Let's add a donut chart, which is a version of pie chart. What I'm going to do is I am going to use the daily production of water because I want to see how much each well is contributing to the water production. So we will drag and drop the water on the values. And on the legend, what I'm going to use the wells to break down these charts. And there we go. Now you're seeing the percentage for each well based on its own contribution. And this is, of course, based on the total production, like the total cumulative production from the past years. You can also do this with average. You can do this with the maximum. You can do this with the minimum, or you can do this with any calculation you want. Most of the time, it's usually either summation or average. If you see, we have too many wells that are presented in the results in front of us. So what we can do is now, there are other tables that basically contains other informations about these wells. Usually in Excel, it's extremely cumbersome and demands some attention from us if we want to connect multiple Excels together. But in Power BI, since we have the concept of data model and we have the concept of relationship, we can just use any table we want. For example, we have a table called header, and the header table contains lots and lots of information. So before I start diving deeper and showing you how to connect everything together, let me show you what this table looks like from the data. Now what you're seeing is the report view. You can switch from the report view into the table view. And in the table view, if you click on the headers, you will see like all the data that are related to these wells. For example, you have the well number, you have the state, which is the state that these are coming from, plus we have the formation of the reservoir, the initial reservoir pressure. We have lots of things like wellbore diameter, the porosity, permeability, and everything in between. We have, of course, the well spacing, we have the flow path ID, and we have the initial gas oil ratio and whatnot. We have the separator pressure as well. So what we can do is we can utilize all of these columns to narrow down the results that we are seeing on this. Because who needs to see all of the formations or all of the players that are contributing to this? Maybe you want specific results. So that's why we use something called a slicer. A slicer is basically, it's a filter. So we will click on the slicer, and then we are going to use any information we want. For example, let's use the reservoir formation. So we will use the reservoir formation, and now what you see, now there is little checks that showed for you. You can use these checks in order to pass in filters from this table into the daily production table. So we will click on Bezier here, for example. You can see we have one well only. You can click on Eagle Ford. You will see you have multiple wells. You can click on Haynesville. You can see you have these numbers of wells. You can see Marcellus, Upper, and you can basically also select multiple ones as well in order to do your analytics. Sometimes people see that the analysis that you see, actually, it's lacking context. Let me show you how. Although you're breaking down the water production by the individual wells that are contributing to this, Sometimes it's necessary to know how many wells are contributing to this formation, or how many wells are producing X amount of water, or how many wells are basically producing X amount of gas. So let me show you how we can do this. Usually, this is done by using something called a card. A card is a graphical component that's usually used for tracking KPIs. So you will click on the card, you will you will be adding this card to your canvas, and then now you will place this card anywhere you want. And this is, by the way, the layout in Power BI is very flexible. You can control any aspect of this. For example, what I want to see in the card is actually the total numbers of wells that are basically in each formation zone. So let me drag and drop the names of the wells, and you can see it's showing me like the name of the well. Actually, I'm not interested in the name of the well. What we can do is we can click to count. This is going to count like the number of wells for us. And of course, we can change this to, for example, count of wells. So this way, we're also changing the label. Now we have converted this into the count of wells. I am going to copy and paste this. And what I'm going to do is we're going to see a different parameter. Maybe we want to see what's the maximum pressure or what's the maximum initial reservoir pressure in these well selections. So we will delete the wells, and then we're going to drag and drop the initial reservoir pressure estimate. You will see that it is 45,000 psi, which is not correct. Why is this? Because this is the summation. Summation, it does not apply on the pressure unless we are working with delta P's. So that's why we can change this from sum to average, or we can change this to the maximum pressure, or we can change this to minimum pressure. So let's change this to the maximum pressure in this subset of wells. Once you do that, now you are seeing the maximum of estimated pressure. If you're not comfortable with the data format that you see, you can easily format that as well. You can click this, you can go to format your visuals, and you can basically use non-units. And of course, if you're not comfortable with the decimals, well, because no, who cares about the decimals if you have like pressure in thousands? So let's make sure that we have 0 decimals. Once you do this, you will see that you're getting like a really nice KPIs that you can monitor. Now, this is not all the story. Let me show you. There is one more thing that you can do. Well, at least to what we're talking about now. It's called a tree. A tree map is something, sorry, it's something that you can add to your chart or something you can add to your canvas. Basically, it will break down the something for you, like the production or the pressure or the total production days and anything that you can think of. Now, what I'm interested in now in seeing in this tree map, I'm interested in seeing how many days these wells went on production. So I will drag and drop the time in days onto this. And of course, I'm going to say that these are based on wells. And you can see now we are getting like which wells are produced the most and which wells basically are not producing the less. So these are basically the bigger ones are usually going to be on the left top. And as you move downward to the right, this is going to be the few ones. So we can convert this into count. Now we can hover and see how many days these wells went on production. You can click on any of these formations like Eagle Ford. Now you can see all the visuals are starting to change. You can click on Marcellus. Now this is changing. You can see Marcellus Upper. This is also changing. And you can see all of those KPIs are also changing. You can also see operational dashboards and you can create operational things. So let me click on plus. So let's create an operational dashboard, which is going to be a really simple operational dashboard. Let's call this properly. Let's add a line chart. Let's give this a nice size. And of course, we're going to use a slicer in order to filter down our charts. And the filter down of these charts are going to be based on the lease. which is going to be the name of the well. Believe it or not, you can also use the reservoir formation in order to filter these wells because multiple filters can actually interact with each other. So let's create, there we go. Now let me show you what usually happens. Below, we have the reservoir formations, and on the top, we have the well names. If you click on any formation, the list of the wells are going to be updated. It's very interactive, even though you're pulling data from different tables, but it's going to work. If you deselect all, it means that you have selected everything. Let me show you some of the things that we can do. For example, I'm going to use the daily data. So I'm going to have the time on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, I'm going to have the active pressure, which is going to be the tubing pressure. So this is what it looks like. And this is going to be the average. This is what my tubing data looks like. And of course, since we're working with multiple wells, it's necessary that we also see some colorings for these lines because I want each line to represent a certain well. And this line is going to be, this color is going to be consistent over the full dashboard. Let me show you. We can drag and drop the least to the legend. Now we have different wells with different colors. And this is very good, by the way. What you can do now, you can select multiple wells as you wish and compare these together. And you can believe me, this is not easily done in Excel. You cannot do this easily. Basically select any number of wells. You can also do some type curve analysis on these selections. Now, this is the active pressure, okay? So let's switch back to one well selection. What we also want to see is we want to see some casing pressure alongside with the tubing pressure. So basically you can connect both of these and know what's happening. So let's do a casing pressure on the secondary axis. And this is the casing pressure that's playing with the tubing pressure. Now, if you want to analyze the trend of the casing and the tubing pressure to see which one is going up, which one is going down, what we usually do is we usually do something called a calculation. We can go to the data and go to daily production. And from there, we are going to create a new column. This column is going to be a very simple calculation that's going to be 100% Excel-like. This is going to be delta pressure equals to tubing pressure, or let's do active pressure minus casing pressure. By the way, you can see there are suggestions for you showing. It's way easier to write the equations. And most importantly, in Excel, you will reference cells by locations of the cells. In Power BI, you're working with full columns. So you will just reference the column. The full calculation is going to be repeated for every row. So you'll click on this green check. And now you have delta pressure that's also showing up. Let me show you something. We can go back to report view. Let's do some curve management. I will switch the location for the casing pressure to be showing next to the tubing pressure. And on the secondary y-axis, I am going to use the delta pressure that I have just calculated on the secondary y-axis. And this delta pressure should show me the actual trend or the actual difference between these two curves. We can now switch between wells and now we can start analyzing. Now you can see in this chart, the tubing pressure is basically taking over the casing pressure. Let's see other wells. Now, this well does not have enough data. That's why you see flat delta pressure. Now, this is another well where basically you're seeing the sum of delta P is basically changing also with time. Plus, there is something else you can do. Each and every well that's basically selected in the Power BI, it's going to go through something called an aggregation. An aggregation basically multiple values combined together. So for example, if I want to calculate the average delta pressure for all of these wells together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select multiple wells. The delta pressure for these multiple wells can be calculated. And of course, I'm not suggesting that you should go ahead and do that, but this is also possible. if you want to do that for other curves. Now, this is for the pressure curves. We can minimize this chart and then add one more chart on top of this. Let's click on the area chart. And on the area chart, what we can do is we can now start to visualize some other data as well. For example, I can show the calculated sand phase pressure, which is going to be the PWF, alongside with the time. Now, this is the PWF, and this is basically the data that's responding to the surface pressures. If you're not comfortable seeing all of these things at the same time, it's good to know that Power BI has a trick in its sleeve, which is the ability to use the time in days in order to filter down your results. So let me show you. We can add a slicer. We will place it in a nice location below. And in this slicer, we are going to use the time in days as a filter. Now I can filter any portion of the data I like. So this is the time corresponding to 1400 to 1900. Now you can see this. Okay, so this is, of course, not the full story. Let's do one more trick before we finish up the session. Usually, we want to know the overall trend of something. Maybe we want to see if the casing pressure is going up. Maybe we want to see if the delta pressure is going up. So that's why what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep the delta pressure. And based on the delta pressure, what I'm going to do is I am going to the analysis, and then I'm going to add a trend line for this. And this is going to show you the overall trend. And of course, the overall trend is subject to some certain outlier data. For example, if we manage to reduce down some more data, you can see now the trend is going up. And of course, you can do something like this. You can go to format, and of course, you hide the lines like this and show the markups. So once you do this, this is going to show you a scatter chart with the analysis. Now, if you want to know what is the average of the delta P in this section of the data for this time frame, you can go to analysis, and then you can add the average line. And this average line updates itself frequently. So we will plus on the average line, and we will give this a nice color. So let's go to black color. Let's color this, let's color this in red. And let's reduce down the transparency and make sure that this is a solid line. Now this is the average line. So the more data you filter, the average line is going to change itself. And of course, if you include more data, you can see the average line is changing. So this is some of the things that you can do with Power BI that allows you to do some more analysis. And one final thing that usually some people do is to see the actual data. For example, you can add a table. Now let's see the summaries of the production. This is usually used for summaries. Let's say that we want wells, and next to the wells, I want to see how much each well have produced oil. So let's drag and drop oil. Now you're going to see each well, how much it's basically producing oil. You can click on the oil, and this is going to sort this out for you. Now, next to the oil, maybe I want to see the gas as well. Or maybe I want to see how much gas lift volume has been injected over the years. I can drag and drop, and once I drag and drop, I'm going to also sort this as well. This is also sortable. And of course, the more data you add, the more insights that you're going to get. So for example, let's remove the gas injected, and let's see the total number of produced days. We can get that, and we can, of course, create a count of how many days the well went on production. And of course, we can click to reverse the sorting so we can see which wells are basically the oldest and which wells are the newest. We can also add the water next to this, and this is going to show us the water volume as well. You can also go ahead and copy and you can copy the visual, and you can copy this, and you can also show this as a table, and you can, of course, copy the table, and maybe you can paste it somewhere else, like Excel or whatnot. There are lots and lots of details that you can cover in Power BI. You can do matrices, you can do decomposition, you can do data modeling, you can do even some more advanced analytics. So that's all what we have for today. Please make sure that you join tomorrow's session as well, because tomorrow we are going to work fully on Power BI with no theory and whatnot. So tomorrow's session, please make sure to join. We're going to take 100% on Power BI, and we're going to tackle some challenges for data analytics. Now over to you, Nick.